We could do a whole podcast as like Homestar and Strong Bad, and it'd be fantastic.
Yes.
I don't know Homestar or Strong Bad. Chip Zdarsky is just not good at writing Batman.
I don't know what you mean, Homestar. I mean, it's like you give him a robot hand, and now it's better than dragging your dead mother through a desert.
Oh, I do need to try to say that 5 times this episode. Thanks for reminding me. Now, emails.
Emails. Downloads.
You're welcome, Internet. We take things so incredibly professionally here. At the
Listen,
Bulls.
professionalism is for the editors, in which they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for making us look professional.
We put the fresh and professional. Because that means we're pro-fresh.
Dang it. All right. Here we go. Greetings, valued poll listeners, and welcome to episode 91 of the Poll List Podcast, a bi-weekly show about comics, pop culture, and faith. My name is Chris Poirier, and with me, as always, or most of the time, or 99.99% of the time, is the one, the only. Apparently, it's cool enough for him to wear a beanie, and it's still 90 degrees every day where I am, Hector.
It's kind of 60s-ish. This writing it today. It was nice.
Legit, our low will not even be that probably for another 2 to 3 weeks.
And I'm going to the mountains tomorrow, so it's going to be like nice and crisp.
I miss hoodie weather, and I get like 2 months of it, if that.
I have a 15-year-old daughter that wore hoodies and jeans all summer.
Ugh.
So, and flannels. So,
Dedicated. I dig
dedicated.
it. I mean, I respect that. Ah, man. We got a lot of comic stuff to talk about today.
We do.
So we should talk about it. So
No more Homestar.
No more download.
We had that light switch installed so you could turn the light off and on, not throw the little raves.
Yes.
And those of you listening to the podcast have no idea. Go to YouTube and check it out. I mean, I guess we got to do it. So strap yourselves in and prepare yourselves, for we've got Comic Sign.
Better put the word out. Get ready for the nerd out. Better put specs on. Better bring next on. I cut handsome checks for my expansion sets. They call me Obi-Wan. Act like you know me, son.
Downloads, emails.
You keep talking. I'm going to grab something.
Oh, Hector's going to leave me alone. But on today's episode of The Poll List, we do have a wonderful show for you. We are going to hit the latest news that you need to know, our must-pull recommendations from the last 2 weeks, our favorite new number ones, and so very much more. This is The Poll List Podcast. So, as Hector returns, we also wander into our high-tech newsroom. And there he is. Not a sponsor. Homestar.
Here we go.
Strong. So, newsy news. I got a couple interesting things of random comics knowledge and a couple industry things, which are, well, interesting, but for different reasons. Because we do the hard-hitting news here. Gonna talk about a couple things that are actually really interesting going on right now and literally happened in the last 24 hours. So that's legit. But just to kind of give you a dip your toe in so we don't get too serious too early.
Because
Because
the appropriate time to get super serious.
it's early because we record early. So
Fair.
in here in the comic minds doing the hard work. But how many of you out there in listener land are familiar with the Marvel team of Power Pack?
I am not.
Yeah, so
Credulously raises his hand.
so Power Pack, I want to say it was 80s, might have been early 90s, but is about the Power family, of which there are 4, because Marvel does things in 4s. It's comic book math. It's 4 or 70,000 on a team. I don't make the rules, but Power Pack kind of is following the younger members of a family, and it's done by Louise Simonson, so Wheezy, and is one of her creations. And if you ask her, she will tell you that it's one of her favorites. You go to shows and you give her a Power Pack comic, like you're in for a long conversation, and it's a good conversation, but she's bringing them back. And I just wanted to double check. It looks like it's going to be June. So next summer is when it's going to return, and it's Power Pack Into the Storm. And so, I was right. 1984 is the first run, and it ran for 62 issues. So if you're looking for something a little different or something that is kind of a throwback to some of the heyday of 80s Marvel comics and their families and teams, Power Pack's on its way back from basically the original team. I think it's new art, or is it the original full team? But original creator at a minimum is returning, and we're getting us some Power Pack. So,
Okay. Who is on the Power Pack?
like I said, it's the Power family. There are people outside of that you will not recognize by name if that doesn't do anything for you. But Alex Power, Julie Power, Jack Power, and Katie Power.
Nope.
They received all of their powers from a dying alien race and some scientists. But basically, their job is to defend Earth. But they're all siblings. So, there you go.
Okie dokie.
And of course, they know the first family of Marvel, the Fantastic Four, the Fantastics. So, all's good. It's great. That's the vibe. Very much that vibe.
Okay.
So if you're into Fantastic Four, that's probably worth wandering into. And then if you want to cross genres a little bit, it kind of got the Wonder Twins type feel to it as well.
I was about to say that's what the vibe it gave me.
Yeah. So you got some of that going on. Now, this was cool. And I think I remember that we had a little of this conversation when we talked to him back in the day. But Eastman and Laird both said out loud, because someone finally asked the question this way: the Turtles have crossed over with practically everybody. What haven't you done yet that you really want to do? And both of them, without missing a beat, are like, Daredevil.
As they should.
Yeah. Well, they said, truth be told, that's where a lot of inspiration for early Turtles came from, specifically from Frank Miller's run. So if you think artistic and just how that book looked during Daredevil and early Turtles, that's why you got that vibe, fam, is because they're like, yep, that was it. That's why we're doing it. So they recently in an interview, Eastman's like, yeah, totally want to do it. Don't know. I've done a Daredevil cover. He did a variant cover. I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. Yeah. And he was like, yay, I'm so excited. And that's why, because he's like, I want to do the thing. Let us do the thing. So who knows if that's ever going to happen? Marvel's weird, right? Especially with crossovers into stuff that isn't typically theirs, but it's not that it's not been done. So it's not impossible.
Because I like to be surprised with your news. Are you talking in our news segment about Daredevil and All Might?
No.
I'm sorry, not Daredevil and All Might. Sorry, Deadpool and All Might.
No, but I did hear about that.
And I'll find a link while we're talking.
Yeah, there you go.
There is officially a Deadpool manga.
Yes.
And in it, Deadpool tries to call Captain Marvel for help to fight Thanos and hits the wrong button and calls for All Might.
That checks out.
And All Might comes in and Detroit smashes Thanos.
Yep, that checks out.
And then Daredevil and All Might become friends. And All Might in this is drawn by the actual My Hero illustrator.
Nice.
So I'll find you a link for that. But I just thought that was delightful watching. Saw a TikTok on it where Deadpool's interacting with All Might, and I was like, I would watch this.
I would watch this. I would read this.
Yes.
Oh, so good. I had just barely heard about that. So breaking news here in the news center. Brought to you by the one and only Hector. And so let's get to the industry. I mean, that stuff's industry. It's cool. But Hector and I have been talking a lot in the past couple episodes of, well, actually, I feel like it's been, I shouldn't say the last couple. It's like for the last year.
Yeah. Last decade.
We've been talking about the condition of the industry and the quality of product that's hitting the shelves and everything. And that leads us to an interesting conversation. Since we recorded last, Baltimore Comic-Con has occurred. And for many of us who are comic book purists, if you will, consider basically Baltimore and Heroes Con to be kind of the last bastions of truly comic book focused conventions. That San Diego, New York, even C2E2, and on have become multimedia pop culture shows. You know, the focus in San Diego is Hall H, which almost never utters the word comic book for, 5 straight days. New York is primarily media, to the point of a lot of these shows have even moved the artist alleys and comic book vendor sections of them to like the smallest space in their convention centers. But Baltimore and Heroes kind of remain the last bastion of, yeah, there's media guests, but the focus is comics. And so what comes out of Baltimore is the Ringo Awards, which is, basically an East Coast Eisner, if you will, where Eisners are usually San Diego and all that. But it gives you kind of a cross section of, best writers, best illustrators, pencilers, like down the line of comic book creators, right?
Right.
And normally I semi-pay attention, but the last few years I felt like it's kind of like the Oscars, that you're like, no one that actually deserves the win is going to win. It's going to be a bunch of random stuff you've never heard of.
The only time I ever hear of the Ringos is Micah Myers.
Right. Yes, he was nominated for lettering and did not win.
Yeah.
But he was nominated. And there was, it's such a bummer too, because there was a tie in that category. 2 people out of the 6 won. In letterer. Now, granted, he lost to Stan Sakai. So, I mean, who basically does all of his work on his books. So,
right.
Yeah, that's good company, to say the very least. But I looked over this year and I went, okay, this is interesting. Because usually what happens, Eisner's and Ringo, is big name comics tend to occupy this space across the board from the big 2, usually like Marvel or something, DC, best thing or whatever. But what's really interesting is even down to what was nominated, Marvel and DC's name doesn't show up except next to a handful of people. And it appears that no big 2 work won. Now, some big names like in the best inker and penciler, and if that's like the breadth of their work, may have included Marvel or DC. But in terms of things like favorite hero, favorite villain, favorite new series, anthologies, original graphic novels, best single story, none of those went to DC or Marvel this year. Like Oni Press delivered best single issue. Boom Studios best series.
What was that?
Something is Killing the Children.
Fair.
Which we've actually not talked a lot about here, but
I've just never been interesed. That doesn't mean it's not good.
No, there's a lot of people that's their jam, and that's a big one up there. Webtoon had multiple wins, which I have mixed feelings about as a digital first product, but it means that that's where it's going to. Lore Olympus won for like the 4th billionth time. In different categories. I feel like favorite publisher this year was also Dark Horse. That I just kind of looked at the cross section and I went, I feel like this is telling us a story that some of us already knew. but the indies are crushing it right now.
Yes. Yes.
They are writing stories that people are buying. And
Well, dude, Boom and Image are usually some of the better storytellers currently.
yeah, Boom, Image, Oni is climbing, I feel like, in terms of a lot of their ability in storytelling. Webtoon is just becoming one of the places that independent stories are being told because the bar of access is it's much lower than getting it through a publisher.
Right.
You know, you don't have to dedicate editorial or literal ink to that. It's
If you have an
website based.
iPad, you can do it.
Yep. So it's interesting to me because I feel like this is the first time in the last couple of years I didn't see like a Tom King, Rick Remender, go down the list.
I feel like this is a Golden Globes and Academy Award situation,
Right.
where if you
That's
win
good.
at one, they're gonna shun you at the other.
Maybe.
Because Tom
Maybe.
won. Tom and Smallwood like cleaned house at the Eisners.
That's a good point. I don't think they were even nominated over here, which is a little rare, but maybe that's a valid point.
Because usually that's the way I see those things playing out.
Sometimes, but I feel like during some of Tom's like core work on Batman and everything, like both places through and through. It's like, yep, this was the thing this year. But I have to go back and double check for sure. But it's just interesting to me to see, like, there's even people like Ahoy Comics had nominations. Mad Cave, who's starting to show up a lot more as a third on a lot of shelves. Like, interestingly enough, Punisher #1 was Marvel. It looks like one of Marvel's only nominations. Yep. It's just interesting. And so, you know, keep an eye on that stuff out there and pick up stuff that looks interesting that you might not know anything about. You might end up being really surprised by a really good story. Soapbox done.
Well, that's one of the beauties for me of like not just getting your pull box, but like of going and browsing your local comic shop, because there was a 2 or 3 year window pre-pandemic where I was just buying digitally.
Right.
And like
we forgive you.
Again, my only concession / regret is space.
No, totally. It's not wrong.
Because what I've done in turn is like, instead of me buying digital books that are in my library forever, I'm sorting. This is a book I'll want to read again versus a book I'll never want to look at again. And those books end up as like freebies at events or yard sale items. And so they don't crowd up my space. So
there you go.
We should just start like a poll listener giveaway where we just give away all of our excess books to
here.
Like,
you can
random.
Get all the books that we didn't want,
and we'll straight up advertise it that way. It's like, hey, every 3 episodes we're gonna do a drawing for our scavenger books.
Yeah, here you go, fam.
Here's the leftovers, kid. Do something with your life.
Yeah. See? So yeah, it's interesting to say the very least, but I find looking at award lists at least somewhat interesting in the comic book industry. So let's get to the thing. See how much time we can spend here, but try not to live here. I was not aware that this battle had been going on for as long as it apparently had, but it was
a dark and stormy night.
No. I'm trying to figure out when Fables returned to market, if it was 6 months ago, but Fables returned, right? And there was a big how to do because Fables has been a really long running title at DC / Vertigo, has a pretty long following, over 100 issues, I believe, in the wild. Because it is a long running, interesting book, but the creator, Bill Willingham, keeps getting harassed almost by his fan base of, well, when are you going to finish it? And this week on Twitter, he was finally like, why don't you ask DC? I turned in my final script 2 years ago. And everybody went, what? And he's like, yeah, I've been harassing them basically every other day going, there's only 3 issues left. Freaking print them. So, A, people stop bothering me. Like, why am I being lazy and not finishing the book when I have? And I'm also now like, why did you contract me to write this thing that you're now not selling that I can't make my 2 pennies an issue off? And he went straight nuclear option. Like within a day of basically being like, how dare you? He straight up like, cool, I consider DC Comics in breach of contract. All of Fables is now public domain. Which is interesting because if you're aware of how copyright and everything works, as the core creator with products still in the pipeline at a major publisher, he basically announced breach of contract, or what he considers breach of contract, and public domained a couple decades worth of content? I'm trying to think. It originally started in 2002, so yeah. 20 years ago worth of content in a really rich lore environment. He's like, cool, go have fun. And I can only imagine that DC's lawyers are beside themselves trying to figure out what on earth to do.
On the flip side, Universal Discovery's like, we don't know what that is anyway.
Right.
Not Universal, Warner Discovery.
Right. Yeah, they're like, a what? We could have been making a really good show about what? Well, now you still can, but I don't know.
Now everybody else can too.
Yeah,
along with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Yeah, there you go. I thought we agreed not to talk about that here.
Oh, bother.
Oh, no joke.
I'm sorry, Pooh.
So this falls kind of in a long line of what some of us have been seeing kind of in the side, though, that a lot of people have been saying, yeah, the big 2 have been taking really forever in editorial and everything else, or like they almost feel like there's not a plan when there's supposed to be a 1 to 5 year plan usually for editorial content.
Well, the problem with that is if you do things like that, you get fired /Dan Didio.
Ooh.
Because when you try and take a company in a 5-year plan direction,
yep,
and actually make changes and establish things instead of being reactionary and people pleasing,
that can't
shot down.
That's not how comics work. We still love you, Dan. You should be on the podcast.
I love Dan Didio. I don't.
Oh no,
disagree with this.
Oh no, that if anything, like what he did, like I think no one in the industry except a few executives higher than him at DC were like, "How dare you?" And the rest of us were like, "Good for you."
Yeah,
you did it. You that was as close a Jim Shooter move as he could have got. And if you don't know that reference, it's because Jim once upon a time at Marvel was like, "No, seriously, fix your stuff." And they're like, "No." And he's like, "Great." And he left and he started a comic company.
I thought you meant like he was going to have lunch with Michael Watkins.
I mean, well, probably because, maybe it could happen.
It could happen.
He hangs out with Jim all the time. It's not wrong. It's not bad.
No,
it's good. But yeah, so everyone's like, look at what just became public domain. I was like, okay, first of all, here is the important part of this discussion.
Yeah, Mike Perna, our friend sent me a link as we began filming this morning. So
yeah, and it's like, yeah, this is public. It's like, well, I have a feeling DC's lawyers are going to have something to say before the end of today on that one. Yep. And I bet it's not going to be that. So don't rush out and film your Fables
short film
based content today, because you'll probably get your cease and desist letters on Monday.
For the expediency.
Yeah, but I am going to give credit where it's due of I'm glad some creators are stepping into that fray, because like I also wasn't joking, like most creators make less than 5 cents a book on their property. That now, granted, they signed a contract to do that, but comics have kind of been this way for a very long time. That creators, if they don't have full control of their stuff, and they almost never do at the big two, yeah, you're pouring your heart into a creation and a thing and getting practically none of the residual off from it. And in this case, it's not even being read. So, like, the level of frustration, I think a lot of us can at least understand for a creative, that he's like, I did the thing, just do it. But yeah, declaring something is a move, and I think it was very calculated because everybody ran the story. Because, like, all of us at the same time were like, "Do you hear about Fables?" It's like, yes, no.
Oh.
A comic creator putting all of his stuff kind of unilaterally into the public domain will draw the attention of comic book people. Especially that content. It's just good. So anyway, you should read Fables, but maybe wait to find out if he tells you where to buy it from in the future. So at a baseline, I just am kind of curious where that all is going to go and how that's going to work out. So we'll keep an eye on it because I think it may be interesting.
Chris, do you know how to screen share on this?
No.
Okay, cool. Good talk. I'm making a meme because I like to make the memes. So there's going to be a meme associated with this conversation, and we might have it for you somewhere.
You look on the interwebs.
On the interwebs.
You can find us there.
But you might find it.
So other than All Might and Deadpool, I didn't have anything else. I missed that. So,
and All Might and Deadpool is not new.
No,
it's just that the English version is coming, and now it's popping up more.
Yeah, a lot of people. I actually did have at least one other person that was like, "Yo," I was like, hey. I should have included that. I have failed this city, but that's what you need to know. That's our biweekly look at the industry and delivering you on the insider knowledge, or at least the knowledge that Rich Johnson and Twitter's posts, so that we can keep everybody up to date. But you can join in the conversation with Hector and I and all of your nerdy friends over on the Love Thy Nerd Discord or on the Love Thy Nerd Facebook community. Tell us what you like, what you didn't, what we missed, all that good stuff, because that happens. We're two humans, and the internet is so vast and so large, and I can only search so much. So yeah. Let's talk about the comics we did read then, instead of the things that other people talked about on the internet. So I see you are on board with one of my last ones, so I'll let you share that when you get there, and we can talk about it.
What was yours?
Oh, it wasn't from this week, but I did talk about one of your books last episode. Cull.
Okay, that's what I thought. You got the preview of it, right?
No, number 1. Number 2 came out. Number 2 came out this time.
Oh.
You're good.
It sounded familiar.
Yeah, you're like, this looks vaguely familiar.
Okay. Yep, you're right. So I picked up the Cull number 2 and number 1. And
so back to our conversation then last time, I was like, I see kaiju / Hollow Earth theory, but
that's what as soon as I turned the page and saw the kaiju, I was like, this is what Chris was talking about. Okay.
Right. But then issue 2 came out and I went, I have no idea what's going on. So talk to me.
Well, first off, let me just say this is the prettiest book.
Yes.
Hands down out of so here's covers 1 and 2 that I have.
Yep.
But this is the prettiest book I've read in a while, art style wise. If you're a fan, this is going to be a deep dive. Yes. I don't know how many comics / theologians / literature nerds we have all together.
That's a combination.
It is. But they're in this pink water wading through this stuff.
Right.
And it looks like Paralandra from C.S. Lewis's Out of the Silent Planet trilogy.
Right.
But yeah, kid goes missing. A group of theater or film nerds go into a portal to try and find missing child. Um, and like they're basically in a Garden of Eden vibe,
Yes.
and where stuff is growing, people are being fruitful and sort of multiplying, and
That was a real subtle reference. Pick it up. You'll learn.
uh, and
Slightly
but
mature book. Sorry, what?
and yeah, slightly mature, but like and so in at the beginning of book one,
Yes.
uh,
Right.
or not book one,
That's
sorry. Good.
Oh.
What were you saying?
No, I was going to say at the beginning of book one is where I was like, I'm in. And then I hit the end of the first issue and I went, what's going on? Then I read the second one and I went, I really don't know what's going on anymore.
So at somewhere in the middle of book two, you get a cute little blue
Oh, yeah.
red panda, but he's blue.
He's blue. Yes.
And so in the conversation, these kids hand that panda a bracelet. And I'm going to
Right.
spoil this. So the end of the last panel, that little blue panda has become anthropomorphic, has grown 8 feet, and is fully sentient and asks, "What is God?" So it's just
Right.
like straight up. There, it's basically, it almost feels like these kids in search of a missing child have stumbled into a Garden of Eden / portal world. But hands down, this is the prettiest art I've seen in a book in a while. This reminds me of how you used to describe They Only
Oh, yeah. The
When We're Dead.
Yep. And
Yeah.
also Isola. Like I had those two books that I was like, it's just pretty.
It is just pretty. But here's the thing, knowing this is only 5 issues, the fact that the first 2 were this good, I'm here for the party.
Yep.
I just want to find out where it's going. It's image, but it feels like a boom book.
Yes.
And I feel like that's the best way to describe it. I am going to call my shop today and tell them to put the rest of this on my pulls. And when I tell them to take Moon Knight off. So, because that is just not fun anymore. For me, at least. But yeah. The Cull 1 and 2. 2 just came out this week though, and it was fresh, and I enjoyed it. It was great. It sounded really familiar, and I remember you mentioning the kaiju spider. But
Yep.
we talk a lot about stuff.
You do. And I like the kaiju, so I probably made lots of kaiju references. So yeah.
Yeah. Jumping on over to Birds of Prey #1. I got the fancy Big Barda cover.
Ooh, yeah.
Just because I like Big Barda.
Yep.
Did you pick this up?
I didn't.
So, I am a huge fan of Gail Simone's run on Birds of Prey. I'm a big Gail Simone fan.
Never. Yeah, doesn't show at all.
She follows me on Twitter. But this has a ridiculously unique art style. It feels like a solid 70s throwback.
Oh yeah, I dig it. I dig that.
Like to almost that the panels seem a little out of focus or blurry because it looks like a 70s book. Like, check this out. It looks like a 70s book that's been photocopied. Like,
oh, cool.
This looks like what I would have picked up in my school library. It's just a good team. It is not as charismatic or witty or sassy as other iterations of Birds of Prey. But it's basically just we have to put a team together because crap's gone down. Basically, somebody has Black Canary's little sister / adopted child, Sin.
Right.
And so she's putting a team together of people to go rescue Sin. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oliver is out because he's wounded and he has to heal. Barbara has declared diplomatic immunity and says, "You can't involve me."
Random, but okay.
Oh, or somebody says Barbara is not allowed to be involved. I forgot if it was who said it per se, but the team
convenience story driving. Some plot point.
Once you hear why, you'll be like, "Never mind, I get it." Um, but like, so it's just Black Canary recruiting a team, and so she recruits Cassandra Cain,
Okay.
Batgirl.
Yep.
She recruits Big Barda.
Yep.
And the thing is, everybody's saying no at first, and then they're like, "Oh, it's for Sin. Okay, I'm in."
It's for the kids.
Yeah, and there's a lady that I'd never heard of before, Zealot.
That sounds familiar. Why does it sound
Like she
familiar?
looks like a samurai. I don't know who she is, or if I did know who she is, I've forgotten. But she's coupling with a grifter when she's recruited.
Oh, that's why. Well, that's why Grifter. She's Wildcats.
She's Wildcats. Okay, that makes sense then.
So Wildstorm, and Wildcats. Yeah. So I was like, why do I know that? And that's why, because I read way more Wildstorm.
Yeah. And then they recruit Harley. And they recruit Harley solely because Cassandra says that she's the best wild card option, because every time Cassandra's crossed with Harley, Harley's almost won.
Mm.
Not because she's a better fighter, but it's just that she doesn't do things that are rational or logic, so she can't predict her moves.
That's yeah.
And so there's this beautiful sequence of
That checks out.
Cassandra fighting Harley in an old battle, and she's reaching for the frying pan, and then instead she gets slapped with a fish. She's like, "Wait, what?" And so you get to watch the deadliest warrior in Batman's arsenal get mollywopped with a cod. Because
your weakness is cod.
Your weakness is cod. As Jane Cobb said, 2 full clips and my swinging cod.
No,
that's the line from Serenity.
Yeah,
But Harley again joins the crew based on the fact of that, and
so okay. You beat up one of the other team members with a fish, and then you get invited.
Yeah,
Okay.
But she signs
Just
on for
checking.
Sin, and she's like, "Ooh, Sin, I like Sin." But yeah, so womp womp womp.
Womp womp.
But some other lady pops up, and who's a character I've never seen before, I believe, called Meridian. It's the lady in the green.
All right.
But here's the plot point, the big last page kicker of why this is a mission and why Barbara can't be involved and everything else, is that Sin is being held on Themyscira and is going to be put to death by the Amazons. So Black Canary is putting a team to go literally invade Paradise Island and fight the Amazons.
Oh, okay. No, we have to go back to Meridian for a second.
Okay.
That didn't stick out to me too, but some diehards are going to do this. First appearance, film, Batman Forever.
Chase Meridian?
Yep.
Like Nicole Kidman's character?
Yep.
Huh.
Criminal psychologist working in Gotham City. First appearance in comics was in 2014. Legends of the Dark Knight 100-page super spectacular.
Okie dokie.
And then a bunch of detective comics that maybe you didn't read.
I read them.
Oh, okay. But yeah.
I've read every detective since 2003.
That's pretty much was in Fear State Omega, because you all know. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a subtle pull, but yeah, that's it.
Interesting. Okay. Gotham War number 2, which is Batman 137. And in that, you get the full breakdown of Batman going relentless against Catwoman, jacking up all of her well-made plans. And
no, my understanding is this is the book. This is what explains the Gotham War. Supposedly. Does it, though?
The other books do.
Okay. DC's like, you're going to get the most information in 137, but...
I don't know about that, bro. I feel like it fleshes out better. You do get new information. You get the fact that in the middle of all this, one of their things is saying that violent crime and everything is down. Well, It's not going to be for long because all of the scary people are conjoining because they can't get any henchmen.
Can we just talk about that pig freaks me out all the time?
Yeah. Oh, so
all the time.
Harley Quinn, the animated series,
Mm-hmm.
uh, has done some really bold things in the new season.
Oh, I haven't started yet, so there we go.
Well, let's just say you get introduced to Pig.
Ooh.
I'll just leave it there. Pigs
All
in the
right.
new season, briefly,
Ugh.
like
Okay.
an episode or two, but Pig in animated with creepies.
Yeah, well, the video game version of him is what creeped me out the most.
Oh, dude, yeah, him and Arkham, fantastically
Yeah.
done.
Right?
But literally, if you look at this rogues gallery right here, this straight up is Long Halloween.
Yeah, that's top tier.
You got everybody up in there, but they're gathering together. But it comes to the point where Batman is going so off the table, hardcore against Selina and all of her people that the entire Bat family shows up to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone. And the only person that sticks up for Bruce is Damian, which leads us to the Batman and Robin comic book. And because that takes place after all the other kids have like squandered their whatever. And then Batman makes the reference going back to Zdarsky level of I didn't need failsafe, I'd already built them.
Right.
But there's this one shot of Damian punching Jason so hard that his mask breaks.
Ooh.
So that's kind of nice. And here's just the
Nice.
spoiler, which, by the way, one of the plot points of the last few books, or last 6 months of books, is that Bruce Wayne, after the events of Joker War, is broke. He's living in a brownstone, doesn't have the mansion, etc. The end of the book gives us the knowledge. He gets served a court's letter or whatever that his that Wayne Manor has been sold. And so he thinks it's like Nightwing or somebody else, and he scurries on over into the cave and to find that someone else has purchased Wayne Manor and is hanging out in the Batcave, and he's like, "Hello, Bruce." Now, I'm gonna give you just for kicks and giggles because I know you missed this issue, and it'll be a week after by the time anybody hears this. Which, by the way, did you know that on the Wednesday this airs is the 21st anniversary of Firefly?
There you go.
So it's the 21st anniversary of Firefly, September 20th.
Brown coats of the world unite.
Unification Day, baby. But it's a villain.
Of course. I mean, based on the setup, I was like, no, it's going to be a villain.
You got one guess. Somebody that could legitimately buy Wayne Manor without a problem.
Typical Batman or all DC?
All DC.
Okay. So my brain immediately went to Lex, which makes me sad.
Right.
So in terms of that, I go there, but I also go to the weird place of, depending where we are in the story, actual timeline, Penguin's got money, Dent's got money. Yeah, I know there are more tiered folks that have money, but
all right, you ready?
There's who I want it to be, but
who do you want it to be?
Like for me, I feel like Scarecrow is always going to be in his head.
Yeah,
and in theory, any of the supervillains have enough money to do it, but legitimately, that's why I end up on like your Lexes and your other dudes.
All right, here we go. Vandal Savage.
That's annoying.
When's the last time you saw Vandal Savage?
No, that's why
part in a Bat book.
Well, that's why I'm like, you just did we haven't done this in a while.
Yeah,
and it's been like 3 years since they even like focused on him, right?
Right. All right, because I've been taking a long time. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my last book, which is uh, Batman Gargoyle of Gotham, and I got the Frank Miller cover, which is nice.
You know, I thought I saw. I gotta look now. I saw a cover and I went, "Hey."
And I won't put a lot of detail into this review other than to say this book is unique. This book feels incredibly gritty. It is very much a Black Label book. But the villain is pretty terrifying. But he's a guy who is murdering people in like Looney Tunes fashion. Um, but and I know I just said that in a jovial way, but I mean, like, look at this guy. Like,
Oh.
yeah, like, so he's hyper fixated on an old classic cartoon that kind of looks like a 1930s Warner Brothers Disney looking thing, and he's murdering people in that fashion. In fact, there's one part which I'm sure is going to have some copyright issues up of that character like de-braining Mickey Mouse. Like
Similar yet legally distinct.
Similar but legally distinct. But and this also this is some of the most terrifying villainry I've seen. Like, so this guy is probably the scariest villain I've seen in Batman's arsenal in a decade. Like, where this guy legitimately gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Got the spoopy book. Got it.
Got the spoopy book. This feels, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get the Frank Miller cover, is because this feels like if Dark Knight Returns had an organic successor.
Ooh.
Not like a force we're trying to push this. This
Right.
feels like an organic birth child of the Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
And we end with this last panel of the villain doing some villainry. And it says, he says, a child chasing his shadow, but when you chase your own shadow, it leads you into the abyss. And then it's like, cut. This also gives us Prime Gordon. So Gordon's not old and decrepit.
Right.
They also they talk about prayer a lot in this book, and Batman sends Alfred on a reconnaissance mission to do acting. This feels like if we're doing like if Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, it's in those vibes, but it definitely feels like established prime Bruce. No kids, no sidekicks.
Yep.
Just good Bruce as Batman. So there you go. What you got?
Bruce is the Bats. Well, I have a couple. We're almost in spoopy season, so I start reading a lot of those. But I also, tried to give Marvel every chance they get. So get off me, the internet. And
I read Fantastic Four. I read Moon Knight.
Werewolf by Night one shot was this week, and yeah. They're about to re-release the Disney Plus, but in color this year. So, because they did the cool black and white thing, which was really cool.
Yeah.
They're going to release it in full color this year, so we can see the detail and everything. But what's kind of fun is this book, when we see Werewolf, is mostly black and white, but with red. But then every time we see Elsa Bloodstone, it's in full color.
Nice.
And it's a really cool vibe throughout the entire book of what all the stuff looks like, the penciling and everything. There's back and forth. There's super creepy stuff going on. In fact, I got to find it so I can say it right, because every time I read it, I was like, am I saying this word right? But like the guy they're here to get is like Dr. Necromantic or something like that, and it's like, I see what you did there, but also I hate you. So it's very aware of what it is as a book, but it's a single shot story. It's Werewolf and Bloodstone doing the monster hunting and killing thing, so do it. I was actually pretty happy with
fun
that.
times.
Yeah, no, I was like, that's cool. Next, I am still reading all of Jeff Lemire's super creepy stuff in his Bone Orchard universe. So Tenement number 3 came out and is so far the most confusing entry. But it stays on my list because Jeff continues to say that the point of everything in Bone Orchard is that it's connected, but also that part of the horror here is that it is kind of viscerally and mentally confusing, more so than the visuals are shocking or anything else. Some of the visuals are, but he's like, we're constantly messing with just concepts. And one of the biggest concepts throughout any of these books is almost none of it is in regular comic book layout. Like that's as close as you're going to get. And if you look really close, they're not square. They're all weird shapes or are slightly off.
Okay.
Uses lots of circles in places to separate stuff. That going through this experience is generally just kind of strange in terms of reading regular comics. Because it's all laid out kind of different. Now it all serves a purpose. You can see it in the storytelling and everything, but the whole thing is kind of just designed to elicit different types of response. So this is almost wandering into like art house territory for me, because you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But it's interesting, and I like it when comics push me out of the box.
I stopped at episode 2, but only for budgetary purposes.
Oh, I don't blame you. Not at all, because like I said, you're either into it and trying to figure it out. And I read all of Gideon Falls, which was technically the setup to the Bone Orchard. So, it's wild. So if you're into that space, that's a thing you should probably go out there and check out. But what was really fun is we finally get the second issue of The Sacrificers.
Okay.
And we still have no idea what's really going on. But it's still very pretty. And it's very fantasy because they're still kind of going along the countryside of this really weird place, collecting sacrificers who get bound and are led on this chain gang basically to wherever they're going. And now issue 2, we still don't know what happens to a sacrificer, what they exist for. And that actually is the entire conversation of this issue is they're going to murder us all at the end, right? They're going to push us into a volcano to appease the volcano god, says one person. Another person's like, yeah, they're sacrificing us for the fall festivals. Like they all have a theory, but none of them know.
Right.
And one of the conversation, and you're also starting to see the different types of people, and you're starting to find that they get people from all types of backgrounds. Like early, you kind of get the vibe that it's like all the agrarian, so like farmers and like poor people or something like that it's going to be one of those stories. But in this issue, they literally go into like a beautiful city and they're like, cool, where's your sacrificer? And to the high society people, they're taught that this is an honor. So the person's excited. And they bring a very different vibe to the group. And you kind of meet some people that are kind of selfish and are like, yeah, we're the ones that are going to die. The main character we were introduced to is like, I don't know, but I guess we'll see. And the other person's like, it's going to be glorious and wonderful. And they're all like, that's still kind of creepy, but I guess you're not wrong. It could be that. And just to mess with all of us, spoiler, semi-spoiler, not spoiler, they are like climbing over this giant mountain and are afraid they're going to starve to death and die. And they're like, and they put hoods over them for like the last part. And there's like an entire conversation that's literally in the dark.
Okay.
And the hoods come off. And it's basically Eden. Food everywhere, perfect weather, everything. And the one person's like, told you. And I'm like, this can't be this good. I'm waiting for the axe to fall on this one. But
that's a theme that's popping up in a lot of books lately, though.
Yep.
It's like the whole Eden vibe.
Yep. So this is another one of those, all right, you're still in. I think there's definitely a social commentary going on here, but I have a feeling we're not going to learn the lesson till the end. Because there's a lot of very stereotypical silos being created, but it's not obvious whether it's a pro or negative on any of them yet, because we don't know what the end truly is yet. So interesting, but I'm along for the ride to see where this is actually going. And then that leads me to yet another Marvel book.
Which I let you have.
Daredevil.
So I didn't fight you. But I have words.
That's fair, because this becomes our first post Chip Zdarsky. We now get to go on the journey of, will we have survived 3 creative teams on Daredevil and think it's still good? I'm at least in to find out what happens. A lot of random things happened in this book rather quickly, which seemed a little jarring for a number 1. This was a big number 1, by the way.
I feel like this was just trying to compensate for what Chip did at the end of his book.
Yeah, so I do agree that I feel like this was because we left Matt literally as a priest and it's like, I'm good. And I'm like, yeah, that's not where this story ends. It can't be. So this book spends most of the time basically getting him back to putting the suit on.
Yeah. This is like, okay, let's retcon everything Chip just did.
More or less, sort of. Because we do have basically Elektra still carrying the mantle. But Matt like starting to be like, I feel like my calling is greater, which is almost what happens to Matt every time he forgets. By the way, that this is not necessarily new Daredevil territory in terms of hitting the reset button. But I like the feel of the art this time around.
The art's fine. I actually have a short box with the cover on it.
Yeah, no, it's super good. But I'm kind of in that intermediary of, I don't know if this is better or worse. So I'm giving it positive vibes on art, and at least you didn't completely lose me. But it was a little random. So yeah, but what were your words?
Knuckle crack sounds. But I don't want arthritis. So here's the deal. I am so tired of poorly written clergy in comics.
Oh, yeah.
That because mainstream comic books, outside of a handful of Tom King things, and Chip did a good job as well. Mainstream comic books,
they were pretty fair with his faith. Actually, yeah. Both of them were.
Yeah. They are so scared to have someone be penitent or holy,
right?
Or to set themselves apart, that they have to throw in random curse words in the dialogue just to make you feel like, hey, I'm here, but I'm still, a sinner or whatever else. Like the writing between the priest discussion is subpar. It is not even like it's middle school level.
Yeah.
They're throwing in the D word for Matt's sake. Yes. They're throwing in the D word every other word because it's like, hey, I'm a mature person and I use curse words. It's not even creative. It's not Kevin Smith. If it's not that.
It was actually the one thing that I was like, you left him as a priest where Chip seemed to be pretty honest with it. And I was going to say, I do agree that it was the one thing that I was like, I felt like they were a little fast and loose with it. Like, that I was like, this is, if you think this is what it looks like, not quite.
And here's the thing. If it was one clergy talking to another clergy using some loose profanity, I would almost buy that. He cusses at kids.
Yeah. The kids and the taxi driver and like all the first part, I was like, that was a weird vibe.
That's poor writing. That's poor planning. And to me feels like you don't have a full grasp of this character, or that you're just trying to catch up to get him out of this place because you didn't want to write this in the first place.
It could be. So that's kind of why I'm like, it wasn't enough to turn it all the way off, but I do want to see what happens next.
I'm just saying, I felt like that was not even disrespectful. I feel like that was just like, you don't understand your character or your audience if that's what you do with that.
It's
Razzle dazzle.
no, that's a very valid conversation, because I did feel weird during all that. Every time I saw him in a collar and the way it was being treated felt very different from how Chip was handling it and how it felt in all previous runs with him. That like Matt's faith is like one of his most complicated aspects of him, and plenty of people that are outside of the faith have written him honestly in the past. So it's not hard to ask of that.
On that same note, there are 3 Bible passages quoted throughout the book. And I also feel like, it was like, flip the book open, put your finger down. Like the one where, he sees something scary. And by the way, I will give it credit for the evil force. That was alarming. That felt like some Jeff Lemire stuff.
Yeah.
He gets scared. He starts quoting Joshua 1:9. I'll bite. The quote of be transformed by the renewing of your mind, like, easier said than done, but I'll bite. That was decent. Him looking at the tall building and quoting the Acts passage about Ananias and Sapphira felt like ridiculously out of context, and like he had no idea what that passage was really meaning. So aggressive commentary.
When comics upset theologians.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that's one of the few times I was like, "What are you doing?" Because I've not had those moments too often in Daredevil.
Yeah,
but this rubbed me a little raw. But go.
That's fair. So jumping over then to wrap up for the day into our number ones, I probably gonna shock somebody. I picked this book up expecting it to probably not be good. But Avengers Inc. I actually enjoyed, because art-wise, it's pretty cool.
Is that Ramita Jr. or who is that?
No. Let's see. Ewing, Kirk, and Sinclair are the 3 listed.
Okay.
But it's very pretty, and it has a Tom King vibe to story approach of, it's not cartoony, but it's literally Janet Van Dyne is going to be pretty much this investigator. They're bringing her in to like a detective to solve problems, and because a bunch of villains die on the raft, so the super prison out in the ocean for folks, and they don't know how because they're under surveillance and everything, and they all died. They come back to life somehow in the morgue as clearly like an escape attempt, but the person that was Whirlwind, literally the dude with the saw blades on his forearms.
Yeah.
Which is still one of my favorite random villains of I will cut you. But he has this little, like literally a hole in his forehead. And when she shows up, he starts glowing and everything. And basically where you end up at the end of this setup story is he introduces himself as Victor Shade. If you don't know who that is, a handful of people went, "Heh." Victor Shade is one of Vision's multiple aliases. Yeah. So basically you get Janet and the Vision now are running a superhero private detective thing out of the Jarvis Lounge. and they've created Avengers Incorporated. So sure, it's gimmicky and Marvel-y and everything, but the art's really good, and the actual like crime solving is more Tom King edgy versus like wacky. That when Marvel tries to copy some of their best ideas, I feel like they actually do a good job.
That's
Because
a
that
tweet.
right. Because like Hellcat, I had the same kind of vibe of I was like, yeah, when you take your characters and like actually take them seriously, you do some interesting stuff. Or at least it doesn't feel as crazy as, oh, the X-Men have found a way to resurrect people on an island with plants, so we're just going to do that for like 3 years. What? Anyway, what was your number one?
My number one is a book for you.
What? Oh, yeah. No, I believe that.
Did you see this or read it?
I didn't, but I'm familiar because that's one of those that they renumber whenever they put a subtitle next to the thing. It's been around for a while.
Coda?
Uh-huh. Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yep. Usually they've only told their story in 1 through 5s. But yes.
Oh. Okay. So have you ever checked this out at all?
It's been a while.
Okay. So I didn't know this was a pre-existing thing. But it's a mystical land to, like, you know, your shtick of, you know, give me a mystical magical land, but
Yep.
it has different groups of people. Like the story's being narrated by a cowboy in a magic land, who's apparently married to a troll/giant that is on the brute squad, who's out there smashing heads and who can triple in size.
Fair.
And she's off on her own adventure, being brute squatty, trying to get home. And the cowboy is just narrating about the quality of life and where things are, but he's upset because a religious cult that's trying to establish somebody as the new future king and savior of magic, because all magic is dying. He's mad because they stole his unicorn. So the cowboy,
First of all, how dare you?
how dare you? And that's like, he's like, literally, there's a page, that's my effing unicorn. And I wanted to show you the unicorn reveal, of like the prominent page of it. But by and large, so like, here's the unicorn in pretty majesty. Don't nod your head, look at the screen.
Whoa.
Okay, so that's the unicorn in pretty majesty. And just nodding your head, now you're looking at my pretty pictures. How dare you? And then, but this is the unicorn on angry.
Oh, dang.
And so the cowboy, the future king, get arrested, and the troll lady kills a bunch of people, and stuff's happening, and it's moderately confusing. So, yeah, it was fun. It felt like something you would read if you lived here. I would just give it to you. So
Nice.
that's it. That's my.
That's the things. That's the show. I
That's the
guess
show.
as they say, that's the thing. So that's gonna do it for us here at the Pull List Podcast. Episode 91 is now in the books and in your ears and in your eyes. You can see us on the YouTube, but you can't see us on probably all of your wonderful podcasty places, but we don't do this alone. In fact, we are part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. You can hop on over to lovethynerd.com to learn a little more about some other shows, info, previous episodes of our show. Maybe find yourself something new. Hector's got like another show over there and stuff. So you can listen to Hector's wonderful soft voice for hours on end, talking about all kinds of wonderful things. But there's also tons of other new content over there. So go and check it out. But Hector and I do very honestly want to thank each and every one of you for choosing us as your primary comic book knowledge factory on, well, a near weekly basis. We're doing pretty good so far. We did it. So don't leave us hanging. Rate and review the show on your favorite podcasting app of choice. We are on the iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. Who knows? If you can download podcasts there, it's probably there. So just, clickety click, because we only exist because of listeners and viewers like you. So thanks each and every one of you for listening. And remember, kids, read more comics.
I'm gonna take all 7 continents